with betting, I always thought I could solve my problems with it, because all I needed to do was have my day in the sun where I won enough money.
Yeah, but
Problem solved.
Yeah, I've got you. But that's exactly how I thought.
Yeah.
It's going to be different next time.
Yeah.
So I guess in your head, just correct me if I'm wrong, the win is just round the corner. Yeah. The next one was going to. I can solve this with the next win.
100%.
Yeah.
The other one was I'd had experience of winning. So even when things
Precedence.
were going
Precedence.
so wrong,
Wow.
and some of the most ridiculous things you could ever imagine I was doing.
Oh, yeah.
I was at one point paying the postman 250 quid a month to not put mail through my door, so my missus wouldn't find bills.
Really?
I
like your style.
Outstanding issues.
God, I wish I thought of something like that.
I was meeting him at the end of the road every day after training or after whatever I was doing, and he kept my mail in an elastic band, and I went through it, and everything that was incriminating went in the bin. And only things that were acceptable to go through the door went through my door.
Does this sound familiar, John?
It does. I have to relate towards the end of my drinking where, and we'll come on to something else, but I was working on the basis that if I didn't get found with the alcohol, I couldn't get into trouble. The fact that I couldn't fucking stand up and I stunk of it, so I would drink it as quick as I could walking up the road and bin the bottle so my wife couldn't find the bottle. So I was getting rid of the evidence.
And deny you'd ever have it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was so weird that I did that for 3 years in Ireland without getting caught.
Right.
And it was hard and it was time consuming.
Yeah.
And it was almost like having another full-time job.
Yeah.
On top of trying to manage
It's
a
hard.
career
It's
and
hard
a family
work.
life.
Yeah.
He's bonkers, mate, honestly.
You know, betting, drinking, drugging, whatever.
Secrets.
It's hard work.
Yeah.
At that particular time, were family, friends, and possibly work colleagues and that saying, Mark, you need to sort yourself out. This is not good.
How many people knew, Mark? Correct me if I'm wrong. I think I read, was it 12 years this whole thing was going on. So how many people knew? Or did it slowly leak out? Because you're keeping it. If it's like our addiction, you're keeping this as trying to keep a lid on this motherfucker as much as possible. You know.
Yeah, it's a very secretive thing, isn't it? Addiction. I think you try your best to portray an image that everything's fine.
Oh yeah.
I did that. I never gambled in public with my mates. If we went to the races, I would do things at a normal level with them. We'd all throw 100 quid in or whatever and spend the day there and have a few beers. But secretly, I'd be on my phone and I'd be putting thousands of euros or pounds on horses on the side.
Yeah.
So I never wanted people to know. People knew I was bad with money. I owed umpteen lads at the rugby club money. I was borrowing money from everywhere. I had spells of moving money around our accounts, using credit cards, all of those things.
Yeah.
So people knew I was bad with money. They just didn't know why. And I think some people knew I liked to bet. That was obvious. But I don't think anybody knew the height of it. And that was always really important to me, to keep it a secret from people.
And
I
I think this is a really interesting point, and I want to talk about this at depth. So why did we keep it a secret, Mark? We kept it a secret because there was a stigma against it. It was a stigma of being an alcoholic or having a gambling addiction, you know. And it's funny because there's a recent thing in the news I saw, and there's a Radio 1 DJ, Ariella Free, and she unfortunately went live on air, and I think she was a bit worse for wear, and she's been heavily reprimanded for it, you know. And I'm not so sure it's actually her fault, you know, and this is a really interesting point, and this is a point that people might struggle to understand unless they've really trod the path of hideousness, which we have. And the point I'm making is that whenever I took a drink, it was a mind-altering substance. So whatever happened after that was a complete and utter lottery.
Yeah.
And you were working on a reward system with dopamine in your head. You know, when you win, it's a great feeling. You know, you got your brain's going, I love this. I love winning, you know. And you start to make bad decisions when that controls your thing. But stigmatized very much. We don't want people to know about this. We don't want people to know I've got a problem, you know, and it's really commonplace
absolutely
in society today. And I can remember. Here's a good example. This is about 4 years ago, whenever it was. I'm struggling. I'm detoxing. I'm trying to get off the alcohol. I turn up at the local A&E, and I sat there for hours. And eventually, a doctor saw me, and he said, "Why are you here?" And I said, "Look, I am in real trouble here, and I'm either gonna have a seizure. I'm gonna get myself into real trouble. Either you can help me and give me something to stop the detox, the DTs, and I'm shaking like I'm on a washing machine, or I'm gonna have to go and put some more alcohol in me. I don't want to do that." And I found there was a real stigma leveled at me at that point.
I think that.
Sorry, that was a long blurb.
Yeah. The answer to that is for that doctor or for the person that sees you doing what you're doing and can't understand why you're doing it, or says, "Why don't you just stop?"
Yeah.
It's really difficult.
I wish I could.
It's really difficult for people to empathise about something they don't understand. And I think that's why what you would call having lived experience with alcohol or drugs or gambling really helps people contextualise why and how these things happen. So because you can now look back on it with a certain degree of sense, because when you're involved in it, there is none of that. There's no moral compass. There's your decision making is terrible. And with your lady who went to Ibiza, it's the decision making poor. Being put in an environment,
it's been removed almost,
Being put in an environment that, let's be honest, you go to Ibiza, most people who go there on that scene is to listen to some music, drink some alcohol, and potentially take some drugs, but putting somebody who's already vulnerable in that environment, and I think that's why there's sort of people involved in sport, in the military, in high-end trade, in finance, in music, quite often struggle with things because they're in that sort of high-stress, high-pressured environment. Also, they're involved around circumstances that those things happen a lot. And it's easy to get drawn into that. And when you do, because of the environment you're in, it's then really difficult to get out of it. Or put your hands up and say, "I'm really struggling here, I need some help."
Yeah. So we asked this question of all our guests. What was I tried to modify it for different people as well. Mark, what was your most memorable moment when it came to overdoing it? Was it brilliant, or did you end up in the real shit?
Or did it end in tears?
It doesn't have to be a good memorable moment. But we asked this question.
This might be a long answer,
but a broadcastable one.
Look, 6 months before I almost lost my house in Ireland, and that was because I stole money from my employer and actually ended up nearly going to prison because of it.
Wow. Yeah.
I won 100 grand on the horses on a Monday afternoon. So,
that must have been an amazing moment.
I had actually.
Was it a relief at that point?
It wasn't really, because I was already totally addicted to gambling at that stage. I had started the day with about 1,500 quid in my account, and I had 13 winners in a row on the horses. And at 7:30 on the Monday evening, I had €99,089 in my betting account. Normal people would be like, "That is unbelievable. I'm going to cash it out, pay some of the mortgage off, go on a nice holiday, pay some of the debts off." My brain didn't work like that at that point.
Wow, okay.
I wanted to make it 220 grand so I could pay off all of the house. So then you go in, you're deluding yourself into thinking that you need to keep going. And that was the answer, really. If I'd have got to 220, I'd have carried on because I'd have needed some spend. So then you're like, but the reality was at 7:30, I had 100 grand in my betting account. On Wednesday morning the same week, I had none.
Wow.
So like in 28 hours, I lost 100 grand. So that's
how did you feel at
so
that point?
Emotionally difficult to deal with.
I bet.
Because in the same week, you're almost on the ceiling because it's the best thing since sliced bread. But then you're on the floor because it's the worst day of your life because it's all gone. And you only realise that when it's all gone. So I had that circumstance. I had a circumstance I always remember. I had a £500 accumulator on 7 football teams, and this was about 2009, I think. And I was waiting for Leicester City to score a goal, which they did in the 83rd minute. So that would have made me 37 grand. Wow. I was sat at home watching the TV on a Saturday afternoon. We actually had a game on the Sunday that week, so I was just sat killing time. And it was the day that Newcastle played Arsenal at St James's Park, and Arsenal were 4-0 up, and I had them in my accumulator. And from about the 65th to the 90th minute, it went 4-1, 4-2, 4-3, and in the last minute, Czech Tiote scored a 30-yard volley in the top corner, to which Phil Thompson went off his nut on Soccer Saturday, and that cost me 37 grand. And I went off my nut in the house, booted the telly off the wall, smashed my TV. So not only did it cost me 37 grand, it also cost me 900 quid for a new telly. And I lost it, and that was another one. Yeah. But there was so many. There were just so many. Equally, I went to the races with all my mates, and we all threw 200 quid in, and we had 6 winners out of 7, and we walked away with 7 grand each. But it was the best day of all the other lads' lives, and it was probably the worst day of mine, because I was sat there thinking, if I'd have been on my own, I would have won a fortune.
Yeah.
So there's loads of events like that where you're thinking, oh my God, what are you doing? But I mean, I ended up doing all sorts of things. I should have gone to prison, mate. I was borrowing money off gangsters.
Wow.
Probably should have been killed because of that. I didn't properly attend my daughter's birth because of what I did. And then ultimately I was selling possessions in our house, including my wife and kids' stuff.
Yeah.
And that was the final thing that made me want to stop.
Oh, okay.
As weird as it sounds,
No.
I could cope with all the other things. And you could delude yourself into thinking it's going to get better. But only after I'd done that, and then I smashed my house up, and I just sat there thinking, oh my God,